Okay, well, welcome to our first CPID Talk for the winter term. The talk's title today is A Different Sort of Urbanism, Homelessness as an Opportunity to Build Community. Today we're having Brian Barth, which is author of the newly published book, Front Street, Resistance and Rebirth in Tent Cities of Techlandia. They're going to join us today with the Center for Public Interest Design for community building conversations about homelessness. Barth, a journalist with a background in urban planning, will be joined by three characters from the book. We have John, Monte, and Leajay, members of the Wood Street Commons, a collective of unhoused activists from Oakland, whose homeless helping the homeless approach flips the script on current public policy debates around the issue. The group will share solutions pioneered by unhoused communities themselves with important implications for those working in the design profession. And I'll just pass it up to you, Brian. If you let me know when you want to start. Thanks.
Well, thanks for having us. It's really nice to be in Portland. I think Portland, from what I've been gathering, is way ahead of the Bay Area on this issue, so I feel like we're going to be learning a lot while we're here, probably including from you guys. And I don't want to talk at you, I want to talk with you. And most especially, sort of facilitate a conversation with my colleagues here, who are some of the main characters in my book. But just by way of introduction, I do have a background in planning and design. I have a master's degree, never used it, got into journalism instead, and ended up becoming immersed in the unhoused communities of the Bay Area starting about 5 years ago. Went into that knowing really nothing about the issue around homelessness, literally having never met an unhoused person at that time. And what I found really surprised me. It broke down all the stereotypes. It changed my life, and really inspired me to not just write a book, but become a friend and an advocate of the unhoused community. And so, one of the things that really surprised me that you don't hear generally in the media is unhoused communities. One, they're communities. They have their own identities, and that as communities, they really, that's an asset of value that they have. Of tremendous value, actually, that is generally overlooked in policy around homelessness. And two, that they have loads of ideas. They have dreams, they have aspirations, they have hopes, and they have really pragmatic ideas about the situation that they're in and what to do about it. And one community after another that I met, that pattern held true, and but when I came to Wood Street in Oakland, that community there had kind of taken some of their ideas to another level, I would say. It was a community that had been, kind of organically forming over almost a period of a decade, which is relatively rare, and they'd had tenure on one piece of, a very specific piece of land for 3 years, but had been in that same neighborhood for 8+ years, and that longevity of not being swept constantly, as most unhoused communities are, allowed the time for that social infrastructure, as I think of it, to really develop, and out of that social infrastructure, some physical infrastructure began to emerge. They built a whole village out of cob, together with their allies in the house community, with a health clinic and a kitchen and a bathhouse and a guest cabin and pizza oven and all this stuff. People came in and built a bunch of tiny homes, sort of guerrilla style, together with the residents. They had multiple event spaces. They became known around Oakland for putting on these incredible parties, where the house community was invited to the camp, and the idea was to use celebration really as a way to kind of connect, but also, build partnerships and change minds. That really appealed to me because so much of, what we experience in the world of homelessness is a sort of like heavy, like, oh, this is this horrible, intractable issue. And it can just be like, I think unnecessarily that way, like doom and gloom. And, what really drew me to these folks is like, they make solving homelessness kind of fun in a way. And I think that's a really good thing. But the underlying that is the fact that they are a community that that is based on an ethos of interdependence, and that they want to be able to kind of take care of themselves. It's not that they don't want assistance, but they don't want it in a sort of patronizing top-down way. They want to lead the process. And their community was eventually swept in multiple phases over the period of a year, which I documented in the book. And as part of that process, the city wanted them to go into what they called a cabin community, which was basically a bunch of, garden sheds on an asphalt lot with the fence around it and a security guard and basically nothing else. And they had like a year-long period of engagement with the city where the city was like, we want to design this based on your input, and like none of their input whatsoever made it into the design. And there was this huge rupture in trust, not that there was trust to begin with the city, but it was broken even further. And a well-known architect in Oakland, Mike, I always forget it, Pyatak, I never know how to pronounce his last name, who had been working on affordable housing design for many years and had been retained by the city to design these community cabin sites all over Oakland. He did maybe 8 of them or something around town. And then he got to Wood Street and, the community was like, and he was like, I'm working for the wrong team here. So he basically quit working for the city and basically went to work for the community of Wood Street. And that was starting 3 years ago, roughly. So since then, the community was demolished, the community cabins were built. It was a huge disaster, cost millions and millions and millions of dollars. Nobody liked it, hardly anybody got housed, there was no supportive services involved. It was this kind of concentration camp mentality. And but in the meantime, they worked with Mike to develop, very, very comprehensive proposal of like what a space, what a facility would look like based on their values and their needs and their dreams. And I'll let them tell you, more of the specifics about that. But they are now, it's a very grand, kind of, it's a big vision that will take tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to implement. But there is currently $800 million of funding on the table in the county where Oakland is located for homeless services and facilities. So they're going to be going after that funding. Thankfully they're all now housed, and that has allowed them to really kind of formalize what they were already doing informally in their community, which is basically a social services agency, by and for the unhoused community. So they always had this like sort of community kitchen, barbecue, fire pit kind of hub where meals for the community were prepared every night, and it was this thriving place, where housed and unhoused people mixed. And they don't have that physical space anymore, but they're now kind of doing it mobile style, around the city. They take it to other camps and sort of pop it up once a week. The bottom line is uh, this idea is not, not about us without us, basically, like that, not just to be at the table, not just to have a lived experience advisory board, but for those unhoused residents to really be driving the process. So Mike, the architect, in his proposal at the very top, it says buy Wood Street Commons with assistance from Mike Piatock. So it's really their ideas, but he put it into the form of that it needs to be in order to get done and built. So I would love to. These are photos from the community, and I actually am making a documentary about Wood Street as well that's in production. So I have like a 3-minute video to show that just brings it to life a little bit more, makes it a little less abstract, and then we can do like a conversation.
In those blinds next to the screen, be tweaked a little bit, so it's not so much square. Good. Thanks, well.
Another one was Tent City Parks on California. It doesn't look like it's there. There's so much trash, human waste, garbage, and just the stench of it. We're almost again makes little coffee shops.
There's says people all over the place.
The zombies are taking out.
No one that comes here for no reason. And once they get here, that reason tends to change.
God.
I actively committed to acts trying to kill myself. I was out here to die. But somewhere on that path of destruction that I was on, I found this community. And this community, I found life again. There's a lot of people out here trying to tell me that they've met this thing that has changed them. It's infectious. One thing that's disappeared is the love that existed. Nobody judges you there. Self skills there. Unconditionally. Anybody can tell you that. Just that alone is enough to make a person think about bettering themselves. Why would anyone that's out here that has found their spark, why would they want to give that up for something that's less than that spark?
Eviction day is here. City of Oakland is clearing out the sprawling Wood Street homeless encampment. As expected, police officers were met with resistance to today's sweep. Look back! You're not coming to take back here!
Well, I get angry.
I need to tell you guys out here. But what the? What the fuck? We're homeless people. You guys have guns.
We've always been the problem to you.
Fuck that shit. Before you get my weapon.
At this point, it is war. And we need to make the fight large enough that the world is watching.
Whoa.
You know, during these times, it makes you wonder
familiar with life in the world.
So, these aren't people that mess around, you know, they're really serious about what they're doing and what their beliefs are. And, so I guess let me get over here. You know, I would love it if you guys could share about, like, you know, first of all, where does that passion come from?
Well, for me, the passion came from necessity. It was something that we needed. We needed that space, and we needed to be left alone because we recognized what we had building was something that could be shared amongst the other cities outside of ourselves if we were just to be left alone. So my passion came from there.
I'm John Woodstreet. I think it really came from what we did at Woodstreet for me, more or less, is just the way that I grew up. People expect us to act a certain way, or act a different way than society acts because we're labeled homeless and don't, you know, have the set spot that we're at. And that's totally untrue. And so I feel like for me, like everything that was done, I feel like what I contributed to the community was just stuff that I did growing up. It's just stuff that I did as a human being. It was nothing different. So I just did those same things at the place that we lived at that time, you know, to this day. So it's just being human, basically, you know.
And I'm Leajay, and I was on Wood Street for 10 years, and I think for me, what gave me the passion is that, you know, we were already like stigmatized so much. We hated going into Target or, you know, Safeway with backpacks because people just, you know, profile us. And so building that community and having all the things that we need to look out for each other down there. And so like he was talking about earlier, Brian, was, you know, we built our own fully functioning kitchen, and we, Wood Street Commons in the front always had food, like a pantry, and like good food, y'all. Like we got donations from like Good Eggs, so we had like New York steaks and salmon, and, you know, but it was just like building that community and that support. And also, you know, being before I became unhoused, I was doing work within the juvenile justice system around reproductive justice for young women and girls of color. But being self-determined, like, you know what we need, and we can take care of each other, and we don't need people's Band-Aid fixes. And so that's really where my passion came from out there. Like, let's look out for each other. Like, we don't need our hand out, you know, we could do this stuff ourselves.
Yeah, you know, that was a huge theme, is a huge theme, of course, self-determination, autonomy, and it is very different than, you know, the general approach of cities, which is like, you know, here's the services that we're offering you, and good luck, right? It's not so much about engaging. Do you have a question?
No, I just, you said you wanted to be interactive, so I
Please.
wanted to make sure that I understood. And what I understood is you guys found a place to be without having to justify why they be.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Carry on.
And feel free, just, I mean, we'll open it up for questions in a minute, but you can also just speak up in the meantime. But I think, you know, as design professionals and future design professionals, like there's certain ways that, you know, you're trained to like engage with clients, right? And I think, because I come from that background as well, I think it works a little different, you know, when your client is a developer or a university or a homeowner. But I think if your client is an unhoused community, you know, there's it's more complicated. Like there's probably not a lot of preparation in design school for that. So like, I mean, if you guys could share a bit about like what, you know, how it was working with Mike versus like other, you know, kind of professionals that you came in contact with, like what you would want to see from a design community that you're engaged with, a design professional that you're engaged with.
Well, first for me, I love Mike's line. He comes in with humanity. At first it was a little rough around the edges, but he's come around to like, we just were doing one of our mutual aid outreaches last Sunday, and there's an encampment there, and we were walking around and he was all, yeah, well we need, if we could just do this and we could do that, you know, instead of looking at us as if we're an item or a subject to be conquered. I feel like just his heart for the community is his work. I think.
I have a question. What would be the ideal size for you to be able to do the things you want to do? And maybe at some point before the cops came in and tore all that down, you had that size, but I have no sense of how big the encampment was, or what would be ideal to work with, you know, to provide those services, to provide housing. Maybe those have to be separate deals, I don't know.
Well, we have like separate plans as well for different sizes of lots.
Can you give me like,
Well, we were shooting for 22 acres in the beginning, and we're down now to about 5 or 10 acres.
So just a little real quick history of Wood Street, so to understand the scope of all of this and the people that were out there. Let's just say 12 years ago, the city of Oakland, other cities within Alameda County started directing homeless people down to Wood Street. And so Wood Street, the part that we occupied was probably, just to say, about a quarter of a mile from, you know, one end to the next. Most people were out on Front Street, on the street, before, for several years, and then eventually people started migrating sort of into the middle, and then about 5 years in, they migrated into the back onto Caltrans land that was under the freeway. And so it was like, you know, this quarter of a mile stretch, you know, from the street to, you know, maybe 220 yards all the way to the end of the back where people have lived. Cobham Wood, that was mentioned, was just another section of Wood Street. And then our lot that we lived on for 3 years, that we got kicked off of 3 years ago, but we were on there for 3 years, is another piece of the overall Wood Street. And it was city-owned land. It was about 1.5 acres, the size of it. And we were on there for 3 years, and that's how we were able to like organize and become the Wood Street Commons organization that we are today. An ideal piece of land for us to be on for the things that we're trying to, you know, be able to provide. The number of people in Oakland that are unhoused is about 6,000. In our county, about 10,000. So our numbers are really high for, you know, the size of our city, but they're just high in general. And we really think big all the time. Like Monty was saying, there was a parcel of land that was 22 acres that we had been looking at for a long time. But the reason why they said is because of the contamination, because it was part of the old army base. So it was really contaminated, and it would cost about $15 million to get that contamination up and be able to be zoned for people to be able to live on top of it. Right now, Mike Piatok and Housing and Dignity Project that we're working, it's a coalition of a couple of different organizations like the Village, Just Cities, some other organizations in Oakland with different skill sets. Wood Street Commons brings lived experience to this group of people. Right now, we're trying to finalize a proposal of 3 different parcels of land. One is on Caltrans land, 2 of them are on Caltrans land. One of them is slated to get closed down, and we're trying to see if we could get, you know, acquirement of that parcel of land. The other one, for some reason, I just can't remember where it was, but all these parcels of land are probably like 1/2 acre. So we're looking at about, I would say, 50 people. I think it's 40 cabins, 9 to 13 RVs. So we want to make sure that this is a multi-living space. So it's not just, because we have a lot of RV dwellers out there, so it's not just cabins. Also on these sites is where they have a gym, they have the offices, they have our community kitchen, they have 2 conference rooms that will be used as classrooms and stuff. So what we're trying to bring is education, small life skill classes to the people that are out there, because even though you get a roof over your head, that doesn't mean, it means a little bit, but it doesn't mean anything when you're trying to get people ready to get back into society, not the way that we are projecting them to be back, but the way that they want to get back. So the intent of it is to really have a period where we can listen to the clients that are there and let them basically more or less dictate, tell us what it is your path looks like or what you would like it to look like, and we'll make sure that we bring the resources that we don't have to this space so that you guys can go forward like that.
To circle back what Brian was saying is, what's important for you all, like working with cabins and stuff, is actually listening to the people that you're working for. And that's the work that we also try to do. And, just to echo what John is saying, also, like, people that have never experienced homelessness don't know what it means, like, to transition from using propane to now using a regular stove, or how to budget to pay their bills, or now you have electricity. And so these are like the types of programming that we want to help reacclimate people back into living inside. And, for instance, like, somebody might think it's important, just for us to have a heater in there, when we're saying, no, the most important thing is maybe electricity, or a refrigerator to keep my food and things like that. And so, just really engaging folks and seeing what it is that they need when you're building them. And we don't know, it's hella cold out here, so they probably definitely need heaters, where we really don't care about heaters out there in Oakland,
Most of the time.
Yeah, right. But, just things like that. And what's special about Mike is he always, asked us, like, what we need. And in another documentary that's coming out about Wood Street, there's a part where he was making his, like, nice presentation and everybody was like, oh, hell no, you know what I mean? But I think he could have went the other way. And that's also what I want to say, too. Treat people like, we don't want your crumbs. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know that might sound a little bit harsh, but treat people like we're human. And I just had a brain fart. I was going somewhere.
Well, yeah, for example...
this is great. I got it. Hold on. We've been up since 5 in the morning, okay? What I was going to say is... God damn it, Brian. Oh, God. It'll come back. I'm sorry. I'll interrupt you when it does.
Well, many of you may know this, but some of you, if you're not really engaged with the issue, you wouldn't necessarily know. But, like, most facilities, for the homeless, whether it's a congregate shelter, it's just like a nighttime thing, like you come in at dusk and you leave at dawn, or if it's, a tiny home village, which is like the big trend now, where you...
I got it. Wait, let me just say it. A lot of times when the city and government officials are making these, Band-Aids to homelessness and whatever and whatnot, it's like, here, I'm going to give you this and you should be grateful for it, when it probably could have impacted me or made a lot better, use of their money if they would have just, like, asked us what would have been helpful at the time. So that's all I was going to say, is that they just assume we should be grateful for their, whatever, peanut butter and jelly and,
Yeah, and a
It's
garden
it's
should...
their fault.
Exactly.
What's really hard for me to understand is I have friends in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
There's nobody on the street.
That part. Right.
And that's where I'm coming from. So maybe they think you just want to stay in a homeless encampment for the rest of your life. That's not what you want, right?
Well, some people, I was talking to Maverick the other day, and Maverick was like, I like living in my RV, and that's okay too. And who's really mad? Like the person that's paying $3,000 for their one bedroom, that's really who's upset about that. I mean, if you're in your contained home, like, who really cares? And in Oakland, every unhoused person could be housed 3 times over. That's how many vacant units are out there. And so at the end of the day, and then once we start doing more of this advocacy work and hearing all these numbers and sitting on these committees, we're like, oh, they're hella like overspending money for no reason, or they get these big nonprofits to suck up these big budgets, and we as the unhoused, you know, always get the bare minimum, or like I said, we should be grateful. But they could do so much good things. They could get, like John was saying, everybody, at least the Oakland residents, off the streets with that 800, however, how much is it now? It's been going up. 690 million is what I remember.
It's really at $1.1 billion. That is at right now. It was 800 million that was accumulated when we started talking about negotiating the money and stuff. It'll probably be about 1.8 billion in the end of the years. I think it has like 4 or 3.5 more years to keep accumulating. It sounds like a lot of money, which it is a lot of money, but a lot of that money is going to go towards sustaining some of the programs and a lot of that stuff that's already out there in place. And I think since you guys are in this class or know about urban development and stuff, the place that we wanted to create that was on 22 acres that would have housed upwards to like 600 people on this, we call it a campus, an educational campus and stuff, would have been upwards of $200 million to get done, you know, after building and stuff like that. You think about that big chunk of money, and already there's so many other organizations out there that are struggling because this is the only funding that we have available right now in Alameda County. And so Oakland, of course, is not the only city that needs this money. They're just the larger unhoused people live there. So it is a lot of money, but also when you have nonprofits and city officials basically, you know, squandering the money on bullshit, or, you know, things that we can't really tangibly touch or see, and you know, it just weighs in a lot different than what it really is. But it is going to help us keep going forward.
Well, you got a huge population base, you know. One of the reasons, I'm not an architect, it have nothing to do with PSU, so I can just talk off the top of my head.
Okay, be free, be free.
We were complaining that there was $21 million in Portland that was not being used. So like, wow, 600, but you've got a lot of people, you know, and it makes perfect sense to me.
I'm sorry, can I address your question though, the one where it said, where you asked if we want to be out here? For those individuals, some of them do. And that's why the size of your environment can vary to encapsulate those type of individuals. There are a lot of individuals that would like to be nomads, and we should make allowances for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, in the Netherlands, they have all these services, but they say if you don't want them, that's fine. You know.
Because the thing is, it's not that they don't want. See, what we're doing is that you're talking to a group of people that are in this state. You know, they're in a place right now where you're telling me or saying that we can take you and put you in something that we consider better, but you're not providing anything that I have here right now. So when I was out there homeless, I can honestly say I didn't particularly mind being unhoused because of the people that I was around, the community that we built. And so when you said we can put you in these tough sheds, but no guarantee that you'll get housing, or even get me into housing and stuff. But what does that look like for somebody who has, you know, been on drugs for a little while, has, you know, built this community, and this is what I know right now, and I can see my life being out here because I'm alive, and it wasn't. I don't take this wrong, but it wasn't for me. Yes, it's bad being unhoused, right, and not having that security, but a lot of the times it really wasn't that bad. It wasn't like, you know, like this miserable existence.
The alternative wasn't better.
It was
So I was
not.
talking to a friend.
Not at all.
I was talking to a friend who said that there's individuals or people that want to be out there, and so we are people, we're human. We're going to go through different phases of our life.
Mhm.
The way we internalize some of the problems, our trauma, but the alternative, I said, is it that they want to be out there, or is it the alternative is not better? The alternative does not build the human from the inside, so I'd rather struggle from the outside, but at least have what makes me feel alive, what makes me feel human, connection.
Yeah, for instance,
No,
like,
yeah.
where,
It
you know,
empowers you,
our big
yeah.
thing is all about community. Like, you know, Monte said in the movie, you know, he went out there and he found community. And so to be in community, to know, okay, well, at least if I scream, John is within earshot of me, he can hear me, you know, to going into isolation, to not being able to have visitors, you can't even have your family there, you can't even cook for yourself anymore. And that's, you know, we're supposed to be running and jumping to that, and yeah, it's so and those are the things too that they don't ask. You know, they say for our safety, but a lot of us need that. We have friends who are like in these brand new, you know, developments and stuff. I'm talking about Jamie, you know, who is just like, I'm so sad. I would rather go live in my car, you know, and doesn't know how to get to the grocery store on the bus, doesn't know what bus to even catch to the doctor, doesn't know how to reconnect with all of her service providers and stuff, doesn't know where to go to a food, all these things, you know what I'm saying? And they think that, yeah, by locking us away in isolation, that's making us better, and we're losing folks that way.
There were 271 fatalities from 2024 of homeless people that had just got housed. 271 by impacts.
I mean, my big takeaway, you know, from getting to know you guys and from the process with Mike the architect was to take this thing of value that you have in the camp, which is a campus-like community, actually, you know, and then how do you translate that into more of like a permanent, stable, built environment situation? And, you know, it turns out it's, in many ways, it's just like a lot of other people would want to live. Like you have really nice common areas, like with a fire pit, like in a high-end, you know, condo development. Like you would see, you know, there's a community fire pit, and you know that the structures maybe face each other, right? Which like is not an unusual thing in the design, you know, trends these days. But just to not separate people, but to like ideally move an existing community together. And so like one of the strategies for that was like to have different types of dwelling spaces on one parcel, because not everybody's ready to go like in a full-on apartment. Like there's sort of, like, it sounds weird, you would think they would be grateful for that, but like you guys are saying, that's not really where they're at. Like,
well, you have to think about how they got there, though. I mean, these are, they call them suites, and they're violent. They come in and they strip a person from where they are, where they're comfortable, where their support is, and then they put it in these environments that have half of the things that they already have. So they don't want to go into those environments.
yeah, they're like a institutional quasi-carceral environment. But like in Mike's proposal, you know, you have space for people living in RVs. You have space for like just like kind of camping there overnight. Essentially, you have a tiny home kind of space, and then you have more like apartments. And some people need to like kind of have that real sense of freedom that they had in the camp, of like kind of like no walls and no rules in a way. Like that's just where they're at, and you try to throw them inside 4 walls, you know, with a whole bunch of rules, they're not going to stay there. You know, they're going to go back to the street. But as people sort of recover, sometimes they may want to graduate, you know, in a sense, to the tiny home, you know, and then eventually to the apartment, you know. But normally these things are all spread out geographically. It's not integrated. It's not designed for like that community, that social infrastructure to remain intact. That one asset that is so priceless that you have is taken away, and then it just the social fabric, you know, falls apart.
But I have a question here, sir.
I'm sorry. I have several questions. it's just a lot for me to process as the time because I never experienced homeless, and you are right. If someone never experienced homeless, it's hard for me as an architect or designer is to fully wrap on what you really. So what I'm hearing you right now, if you say your idea of home is the place that you have the ability to build it yourself, to make changes yourself, and be in a community with other people. And the housings that government offered right now is now working for homeless individuals because the isolation put them in, and it does not allow them to bring stuff that they love or allow them to do change it that they need to do, right? Now, but when I saw the movie, and for me to see that individuals live in that condition, to me is inhumane. Because it's not clean, it does not provide enough warmth. But you like that environment.
No, we don't.
No.
You don't like that
No, we don't.
but you like the freedom you
The
want
community.
in that
Well,
environment.
They like the community because they
You
take
like
care
the
of each other.
We
Yes.
do like the community, we don't like the garbage. We
Like
just
they
weren't allowed to, we actually tried to pay for garbage removal from the city.
Look at him cleaning. See?
And we were denied those dumpsters. They eventually came and gave us some rollaway garbage cans, and we started to do that. But every day, John and I were cleaning. We did not want to live in the dirt, in the garbage.
Nobody wants to live in that type of environment, but when you have cities that, across the United States that will not provide the humane service that everybody else is privy to, then stuff builds up. Also, and I mean, no disrespect to these photographs and stuff, there is this sort of a habit of when we show stuff that pertains to unhoused people, for some reason it always ends up being a lot of trash involved in the photographs and stuff. And I wish, honestly, that we would have came with more photos from the Wood Street Commons so you could actually see the common areas that we created out of all of that other stuff that illegal dumping actually brought to our community and wasn't picked up on any type of regular basis. And that's how it is across the United States, to keep the narrative going, to keep you guys, everyone, against us, and to keep us separated and stuff. Nobody sets out to live like that, but when you get to a place where it gets so dark in your life and you don't have any support to support those humane things so that you have an environment where you can live in, that maybe you could start thinking clearly about what maybe your next step would be, you're going to turn into somewhat of that environment. Us three right here, I will honestly say we were blessed with being able to have a higher capacity at that time in our lives than a lot of our counterparts that lived with us. So we were able to organize our community and try to, we call it our street dad. And this is one of my brothers from the street, honestly. And our street dad is someone that had a philosophy is just because you're homeless doesn't mean you have to live like you're homeless.
Yeah.
And we've always lived by that. And
He had carpet and all kinds of
Okay,
stuff in
right.
his
Golf courses.
shipping containers.
he had a golf course.
Honestly,
a putting green in his yard.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, but it was just everything that everyone in the world has. We had it there. We just,
Yeah, I really wanna, I feel we live in a world where we're forgetting there's more to us than just our outside bodies and the material pursuits that we have, right? And so I think it's not the desire to be out there, to be in clutter or in garbage or in the inconsistency of being out there, but I think it's having built community at a dark time in your life, where you have loved ones, where you have people that understand you, where you're able to actually build out, and kind of reassess and restructure your compass a little bit. And so it's not that there's that give and take. And so I want to make sure you're
Yeah,
questioning.
so my point is, like,
And tell me if I'm correct, by the way. Was I spot on?
well, yeah, my point is like I'm researching this project so I can learn how to build a community. I'm not interested in only learn how to build a building, but building a community for the house individual to heal, and that's my intentions. But at the same time, we need to get sewage cleanings and garbage cleaning, and how is that all fit in the city? So the city's the aesthetic of the city, right?
And also,
First you have to just listen.
Mm-hmm.
We're forgetting that these are individuals that have their own goals, their own aspirations, and that on some level they want better. I don't care if they want better for tomorrow, they want better for tomorrow, but you have to include them, encapsulate them in all those conversations, and that historically has not been happening, and that's why they're failing.
Not just us though. Remember, like, we've been housed for 3 years, so when you're asking us questions and you're asking yourself, you know, you have to think about, like, you gotta go to the source for the people that you're actually trying to help at this moment, because we weren't getting swept every week, every month. We were able to be where we're at for such a long
when it
period
was
of time.
behind Home Depot, it was every
Oh,
other
yeah.
week.
Yeah, but
Every
at
other
that
week.
time though, but at that
Right,
time you were
well.
being swept at that time, but the
Ugh.
last leg of our journey is that
Oh, yeah.
we weren't swept for years.
Yeah,
Most people now are being swept, you know, weekly and stuff. So their immediate needs or what they're thinking they want or what they need is different than what but I mean, it's still sort of the same, but the best way to find out how you can help the people that you want to help is go directly and talk to them.
And I also wanted to add too, it's like what also gave us, like, built us in our own leadership is being engaged, like having something to do, John cleaning, Monte building, or doing whatever, you know, and me going and picking up the food donations, like me being engaged in that community gave me a sense of ownership and made me want to, like, be more involved and fight for that community. And so it's also like, when you are thinking about building spaces, having community spaces for people, like workforce development, and getting people back into not feeling like they're just being handed something, like build them up and empower them to take back control, you know, and adults again, or, you know, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's what really helps also, and that's part of the things too that, like, we're making sure is in, like, whatever plans that we have, is that there's that peer support, or there's that engagement, but helping people be long sustainable, especially with this. I ain't even gonna give him. I'm not gonna say his name.
Donald Trump.
Oh God, Mufasa. No, and a lot of folks don't know all the cuts coming down from HUD and stuff like that right now. So we don't even know how long these, like, housing, project-based housing and all that is even going to be funded. And so teaching people to be self-sustainable, even where I live at. So I didn't go into any subsidized housing. I actually live in a project called Home Fullness, a poor people's solution to homelessness, and we live rent-free forever. There's 25 of us there, and it came from, you know, people with race and class privilege, radically redistributing, and that's how we have a school, a farm, we have a radio station, and we have all these things, you know, to continue to advocate and fight for our community out there, and have a different type of solution. And so just, like, being in community there has, because also, to be transparent, I was a intravenous drug user while I was fentanyl, meth, and heroin. And so, you know, it was bittersweet for me for Wood Street being closed down, but it was also the opportunity for me to make a better, you know, direction for myself, so that I can go back and help fight for my, you know, peers and things out there. And so having that community structure is something that I needed. I couldn't be alone after getting out of drug treatment program. I needed to know that I had that support, those neighbors, people that genuinely cared about me, not just some random people I never knew living next door to me, but somebody that I know that I can call, you know, and say I'm struggling, and also be in a place where we are also bringing in healing hubs and providing that support, you know, for the community, because we've been out there and we were exposed to so much trauma over the years, but but not having to be in this rat race of trying to like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say there's different ways to also reimagine what community housing looks like. And so, I mean, I know that Brian wrote about it in his, are we talking about the book today? Did you bring your book? Oh, okay. It's in the book,
It's
y'all.
in the car, the
But,
book. I should have brought it in, but
what kind of author are you, Brian? Okay. Are we up here promoting the book? Anyway,
So tonight there is a book event at Broadway Books. That's originally what brought us up here, and you're all, of course, more than welcome to come. But I just want to say, to kind of answer your question, like there's different levels and ways to engage. One takeaway from the book is kind of upgrading the camps. Meeting people where they're at now instead of just constantly sweeping them, which traumatizes them and downgrades the situation and makes it more difficult for them to help themselves, to help stabilize them in place by, just basic things like garbage collection and, allowing volunteers to build tiny homes, and not try to enforce code enforcement and whatnot on them and things like that. In the camp, this whole Cobb village was literally bulldozed, and these tiny homes built by volunteers with $3,000 of materials literally crushed with bulldozers.
Yeah, well,
chaos.
Oakland was giving small neighborhoods $100,000 grants to build community, little urban gardens. They destroyed our whole eco village that was made of completely like recycled and
Newspaper, pallets.
Can I speak to that? This is the conflict, right? Because every time that folks on the street get together and take care of each other and they do it efficiently and they do it effectively and they're doing this kind of community surveillance, mutual aid, having that buddy you can call 3 a.m. Hey, that's not stuff that most of us have, right? And the more effective you are at being efficient and lean and targeted, the more of a threat you are to fucking everything else, to everything that the city's about, which is you got to be in that rat race if you want to survive. That's the bargain, right? It's you got to commit, and you got to commit to a lifetime of labor, and then we'll give you a minimal amount of healthcare and housing, right? That's the bargain. And there are folks who are like shut out of that bargain. They're making something else, right? It's not just you guys, it's all over. It's here, all over the West Coast, right? People coming together. And then the city says, well, we can't have that. That's dangerous. You guys are too healthy. You guys are helping each other too well. It's too threatening. Why do they keep destroying? Why is there no middle ground? I think we have to understand this conflict clearly. The city is not your partner.
No.
They are not. I mean, you know that better than we do.
we live in a capitalist society, so anything that they, and that's Tiny's words, but anything that fits outside the box or is actually for the people, hell no. They can't make no money off of us living rent-free forever, you know what I'm saying? So of course they're gonna target something like that, or, you know, when we're unhoused, we're living a life of exposure. All of our business is on the street. But one of my favorite shows, and don't judge me, y'all, is Hoarders. But how many $0.2 million? You know what I'm saying? But at least they got walls to cover up their mess. Ours was just out there for everybody to see. And, you know, it's because just like, you know, drugs or marijuana, until they found a way that they could make money off of it, it was illegal, you know? And so I guess right now they're finding a way to make money off of us by, you know, homelessness is booming right now.
Every time you help each other, you put a highly paid social worker out of a job.
But you know what? You know what's happening? That ball rolls very slowly. Things are changing, and I feel like it's because of the work that we're doing, and it's happening, not just us, but people in the same stature that's doing it in other places. That ball is moving. It's just moving very slowly. Because what's going to happen is you're going to have more homeless people living out of citizens if you don't correct it fast.
Sure. And a big part of the book is about homefulness that Leajay mentioned, where she currently lives, and just to elaborate a bit more on that, homefulness was basically a group of unhoused people that came together, and through their brilliance and their charisma and some higher power, I would say, managed to convince a whole bunch of housed individuals to donate a whole lot of money to buy a piece of land in Oakland and to build some townhomes on it. And
that we built ourselves.
yeah, but with the help of professionals, like there were architects involved who donated their services, there were tradespeople who helped guide the process, and money was donated to pay unhoused people to provide the labor. And it's an incredible example of kind of working outside that system, basically just like, if you don't believe that the city's approach is working or something that you think makes sense philosophically, like Tiny as the leader of that community, has a whole model that she's created. Homefulness, I guess, started about 10 years ago at this point.
Yeah,
And
well,
now
it took
they're
them 10 years to build it.
replicating it. They have homefulness.
This
2.
Saturday, we're doing the groundbreaking opening ceremony for Homefulness Yelamu, which is San Francisco. We've been back and forth looking for land in Homefulness Tawangar, that's at Los Angeles. And we also have I live in Homefulness 1, and there's Homefulness 2, like 6 blocks down, and they're doing their opening ceremony in 2 weeks, letting in 2 more residents there, so.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these things can happen like outside of the matrix, so to speak. I mean, a camp is like totally outside the matrix, but even like regular housing, I mean, these are just like regular old townhomes. That's how they look on the outside, but on the inside, it's a different way of living. There's no non-profit organization, there's no philanthropic organization. And there is
Don't use
philanthropy.
Tiny's words. No non-profiteers, no philanthropists. Tiny's also a poet, so she's always like, I don't even want to say like I'm a capitalist.
Yeah, but there's, the point is like with the willpower, which you guys have in abundance, you can get things done and not be reliant on the existing
Yeah. And
system.
you're also in a position where you can pass on those organizational skills that you are working with to the more immediate situation where you have a new homeless person. They got evicted and is clueless of what to do. That stuff needs to be in place so that you can help people,
And that's what we do through our mutual aid.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
try to
because
empower-
everybody's different,
We
Some
try to
people,
empower people.
they have different requirements.
I was gonna say, it's there because some of us are very bad, and this is our work, we work at what we say the homeless service in this day. And I'd love to continue the conversation, but we're unfortunately booked at 9 tonight, we have time, so it's unfortunate, but how do we continue the conversation?
Great question. I'm sure that you guys would do a Zoom or like come back up here again. I know that Ron mentioned there's like a bigger.
Fridays at 1 is our big guy.
Yeah. So you could organize that for the future. And come back up.
We'll figure out a way to get, but let's keep talking about, there's things we overlap, services, things like that. And I've actually worked with Mike for a decade.
Mike Python?
Yeah.
Yeah, FIAI, he likes us
I got a
to
quick
say
question for you.
FAIA.
I got a quick question for you. So I listened to you guys talking about that you guys have created these tiny home communities out here. Like, so are you guys getting funding from the city? Any of the money coming from the city? How did you guys work with the city?
The way that our housing program began is that we were, when I came here, we've been working in Texas on housing, but it was funded actually, I got funding from the utilities. Because Texas is an oil boom thing, but it's all dominated by public utility. So I got public utilities to pay for in Austin, in Dallas, for housing. So when we came here, we were trying to figure out how to make it work. So we were there was a congress of the housing community. Ours is as big as yours, even though the city's the greatest side. And it's actually we started to. We were approached by this congress of different communities, and said, we need to move the ball forward. We know that you've done this work, and so what we did is we met with them and went and studied the different villages that were created and how they worked and things like that, and then organized a massive design-in. We invited all the firms in town and 300 clients, representative clients of the whole community, sat down in Mercy Bar, the world headquarters in Mercy Bar here. And for an entire weekend, we sat down and had a giant charrette, a giant design charrette. And out of it came ideas for how to take the idea, the lived experience of the community, and make it the framework for the villages we proposed. And then we hoodwinked the mayor to come visit, because he said, oh, well, these firms, big firms on there, so they must be okay. But turned out we kind of guilt tripped them into funding the first. Anyway, that's how it's gone now. We're 12 villages later. But our model is very different because we're distributed, and so we are embedding throughout the city, and rather than having one larger ones, we felt that would just marginalize the community. So we've been going community by community and doing a co-production process where we sit down with the community, the house community, then house meet together, and then spend 3 months through a planning process, and then decide what they each need, in the village. And every city has warehouse space, like warehouse land for the future development. We have 172 lots per city.
The city also co-opted everything that we did to build these villages when they brought in urban alchemy.
Yeah.
Now, urban alchemy is running some of these tiny home villages.
Totally.
How is that going with urban alchemy out here? How is
Because
that
they're
going?
Terrible.
Yes, right.
They're awful.
They are.
Yes.
They're colonizers.
Yes, they are.
They are exploiters and extractors. They're crooks.
And
They
we
moved
dealt
my
with
RV to Urban Alchemy's city sanctioned lot. Yeah.
What are the sizes of the tiny home villages? The lot size.
There's the first one that actually the communities decided should be for women because they're the most impacted. So that started with, a community of 20 something, 18 small homes.
Okay.
We have ones, by the one that with the protein here is the community of 800. It's like, so it's they're all sizes, but usually about 50 to 60 homes, and they're spread out. We try to fit them into lots, and now, like you said, they have to. The next step is to moving further into the community, after their skills. They get out drugs. They kind of begin to get job skills. They know where to go shopping and things like that. And community, those who want to move on, then and then we begin to integrate them into the next step housing, and that's what we're looking at now. Is we've been building these community for all ages through this asset process, and there's 14 in the metro area, there's 20 in the region now, but they're the next step. There's a certain amount of newly housed people and people that are, different economic sectors. And
When's the last time you talked to Mike?
I talked to Mike. He left. We had the Washington State housing together. We were both professors at UW. And then it's been, and most of my work is in Latin America and in the informal settlements of Mexico. That's it. And his is in Oakland and
Could you reach out to him for us? I mean, reach out.
I'll reach out to him.
Could you reach out to him and I'm going to tell him somebody. What's your name again?
Sergio Calderon.
Sergio. I remember Sergio.
Let's tell him Sergio.
Sergio, reach out to him because we need your information. We need ideas like that of how things are going, how you guys are navigating here, because we are having problems navigating in Oakland and coming up against all these hurdles. And your information would be priceless and so invaluable to what we're doing. It would really help us out.
Call them right now.
We'll send that. We'll send.
Did you say that
Hey,
you guys were already doing?
Rosita, do you want to lend them yours and we'll get another copy? Is that your copy?
That's my copy. You guys
Yeah, you guys, we'll figure it out. Just take.
Okay.
Before you all go, just one plug. So, we're doing this nationwide book tour, just disappeared.
Yeah.
And we're doing things like this along the way. It costs a whole lot of money to, take 3 people on planes and put them up in hotels and stuff like that. My expenses are covered for that, but I'm committed to taking them through that everywhere I go. So we have a GoFundMe campaign. Not that one. Somewhere here, but also on that desk at the door, there's a QR code. I know you guys are students, you probably don't have any money to donate, but should you happen to have excess resources, feel free.
Thank you.